I'm Molly Holly, and I'm going live on my personal channel and my Elite Resonance page. So, this is something I feel is very important to me, which is the topic of self leadership. And so, today I want to talk about waiting versus deciding. And so, this is going to be really good for anyone that is maybe stuck trying to make a decision, or you're trying to wait for a sign, or you're waiting for the right time or the right situation to make a decision. Maybe anyone who has previously felt like in the external chaos of the world, they've lost a little bit of their inner authority and they want to remember that self leadership and that inner authority they have naturally, because self leadership is such an important topic to me, because it also encompasses the topic of self permission and giving yourself permission. Because one of the biggest differences I've noticed between those that have what they want, the life that they've gone after, and those that don't is very much self leadership in career, in life, in relationships, in health, in habits. Because self leadership is, I guess, to me, willingness and let me say that again. Self leadership to me means self responsibility, accountability, ownership, permission, deciding, going first. And I'm going to do a mini series on this. So, this is day one of the mini series, waiting versus deciding. And when it comes to waiting versus deciding, essentially what you've got, actually, you know what? I'm going to tell you a story about, I'm going to tell you a story about something that happened to me recently when it came to, decision making. And so, what month are we in? April. Wow. Okay. So it's been maybe like 8 months since I, left my corporate job. And for maybe about nine, how long was it? 8 months. For 8 months of last year, I really struggled to decide. Like, I really struggled to make a decision, because for so long in that job, I was like, do I leave? Do I stay? Maybe I'll just wait for the right circumstances. Maybe I'll just wait for something to happen or wait for something to change to figure out if I need to quit this job or not, or whether I need to stay. And it finally got to the point after 8 months of that job where I think I waited just a bit too long. I waited a bit too long where things got so bad that I guess I kind of had no other choice. Like, I had no other choice but to decide. I had to then decide. And even then, when I had to decide whether I want to stay or go, I was still kept waiting. I kept waiting. It was like I was waiting for some sort of permission or sign or something else to come in and tell me that if I leave that job, everything will be fine, everything will be certain, everything will be okay. But of course, that doesn't happen. We have to decide what we want the right decision to be. And I came to this realization is like, even though staying at that job was the safer option, even though, well, perceived to be the safer option in that moment, and leaving and being an entrepreneur was more risky, I asked myself, I was like, what do I want the right decision to be? What do I want the right decision to be? And choose that decision, choose the decision that I want to be right. And so I left that job on that premise of that, giving myself the permission to be in charge of my career, to be in charge of my path, to have the courage to take that risk. That's the other thing around self leadership. That's the other thing around being a leader, is the willingness to take risks and then being responsible for the consequences of those risks, right? And so deciding to leave that job meant I was now responsible for anything that would happen as a result of leaving. Now I was fully responsible for making this entrepreneurial journey work, for making my life work. And that can be so scary. But that is such the difference between the people who have what they want and the people who don't have what they want. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to leave your job or you have to quit, because self leadership also shows up even at the job. Like, even if you love your job, right? There's problems and issues and projects and opportunities come up, and self leadership is giving yourself the permission to claim ownership over those projects or those problems, being like, okay, I'll be the one to solve it. Or even if you find a problem, being like, I figured out a solution, as opposed to waiting, right? Deciding versus waiting, as opposed to waiting for someone to ask you to solve it, or as opposed to waiting for someone to give you permission to do what you know you're good at, to do what you know you're the one best suited to do. And for so long in my career, I honestly think this is how I got so many leadership, I got invited to leadership opportunities all the time. And I think it's because I showed that self leadership way before I was labeled a leader. And so it naturally, people started to see me as a leader because I had self leadership. And having self leadership meant I gave myself permission to own certain things. But then once I owned it, I also took responsibility, which can be so scary, because now you are the one responsible for whatever happens. You are responsible for the success, but you're also responsible for this failure. And so much courage is required for self leadership. And I think there's so many people that recognize it in others and wish they themselves had that level of self leadership, had that level of self permission and courage and willingness to just go after something, even if there isn't the certainty. Because that's the thing with risk, is that you have to be willing to hold it working out and it not working out to be able to hold that risk. But being able to hold that risk means you also reap the rewards if that works out, if you can lead yourself to that success. And so, to take a breath on this, when it comes to self leadership, waiting versus deciding, what can happen is many people end up in the waiting room of their life, waiting for the right thing to happen, waiting for the money to come, waiting for the relationship, waiting for the perfect situation. But those with self leadership, they go after it regardless. They choose, they decide, they make the direction, because in the end, leadership, if you really pare down to the core meaning of the word, it's to be the one that decides, it's to be the one that chooses the direction. And so it's being that for yourself. You don't necessarily have to be in a leadership role to be a leader of your own life, to lead yourself first. And because when you lead yourself first, you end up being in situations where you can lead others better. So, yes. So, when it comes to self permission, it's another big topic, right? Because when it comes to permission, sometimes we wait for validation. It's like the permission and validation, there's quite a fine line, right? Because validation is what often comes after you've given yourself permission. But we wait for the validation before giving ourselves permission, and that's where we get stuck in this waiting phase. And so when you actually give yourself permission first, as opposed to waiting for the validation, then you end up doing the thing, you end up taking the action, you end up leading yourself and leading your life. So there's so much more. I want to dive deep into this topic, but I just wanted to keep it quite simple to the waiting versus deciding. And so I guess over the next few days, notice where you are not making the decision, like avoiding the decision or avoiding taking the action out of fear that, you're not allowed to, or you're stepping on someone's toes, or no one's asked you to, so you're not going to. Of course, with that said, there are things like sometimes really big decisions in life, it's okay to like take a moment and just like sit with it. But there's a difference between sitting with a big decision versus avoiding making that decision to avoid the consequences that come next. And so it can also just be in the smallest ways, like as opposed to always doing what you've always done or just going along with what someone else wants to do when you know you want to do it differently, to then decide that you want to do it differently and how you want to do it, and take that ownership and that self leadership on board. So, tomorrow, my plan is to talk about responsibility versus blame. So, this is, yeah, hopefully a 5-day mini series. So, if you want to join for that, definitely follow my channel. Otherwise, you can catch the replays here. And if this topic has resonated, I recommend you check out my latest offer, Lead Yourself First, which is a 2-hour intensive. I'll go into more detail about that over the next few days, but if that already sounds like something that you are interested in, then please let me know or check out the link in my bio. Okay, have a good day. Bye. Thanks for watching.